Join me as we look at some large pieces in the rough of world-famous Mexican onyx from the state of Puebla that I acquired back in the year 2000 in exchange for English classes. The geology of this particular onyx is quite interesting. It is believed that this material formed in cave environments, subterranean empty spaces in the ground where calcium carbonate was able to chemically deposit. You can imagine limestone forms more as a sedimentary rock in a marine environment, made of shells and things of that nature settling on the ground. But in this case, it's chemical deposition, so there aren't the impurities such as the shells, and therefore a lot of the onyx is quite transparent, as you'll see later in the video. I would also like to note that the pieces in my collection appear to have been surface collected. For example, laying in a field or on the ground as opposed to from a quarry situation. And the reason I say this is you'll see in many of the pieces how they have been eroded and the pitted surfaces and weathering. However, there are quarries, and they quarry large blocks of this material and even sell it as slabs. I've seen furniture made of onyx, and of course, what most of us probably have experienced in terms of Mexican onyx are the chess sets. I think every tourist location you go to, you can buy a beautiful chess set made of onyx. Of course, the little elephants and the turtles and vases, dishes, plates, statues, and other religious items and things of that nature. I thought about inserting some photos and maybe some videos of such materials in stores and things of that nature, but my video would get very long. I would encourage you go online and basically type in something along the lines of Mexican onyx from Puebla, and you'll find a wealth of information and also plenty of stores and websites that sell such items, and they do a much better job of presenting that kind of content than I ever could. My purpose here is basically to share my collection with you and the amazing story of how I acquired it. Let me give you guys a little bit of my background in Mexico in terms of the hobby, in terms of rock collecting. In the United States, we are blessed with a well-developed culture of hobbies and clubs and things of that nature. Pretty much any city of any size, you can probably find a rock club, you can find a rock shop. But during all the years that I lived in Mexico, I met one other person who was interested in rocks, and he only was so because he had worked in a mine and he had some amazing specimens. And in more recent years, I have started to notice not necessarily rock shops the way we think of them, but in tourist locations, they sell a lot of rock-related material, kind of more aimed at tourism rather than the local population. But it is a step in the right directions for us rock hounds. There are starting to be more sources and people to connect with in the country on that level, especially in mining areas such as Tasco or Guanajuato. In my show and tell video about the amazing crystals from the city of Guanajuato, I mentioned that people were selling these amazing piles of amethyst mostly, but also other materials, just on the street corners. And this was back in like 1992, 1993. So in the tourist areas, there's been quite a bit more emphasis on this type of hobby. Another thing about Mexico, at least in my particular experience, because I usually lived in urban areas, is a lot of urban rock hounding. For example, construction sites, road cuts, things along those lines are where I got most of my rocks. We never had a car, for example, so there were no excursions to far away and exotic places to go rock hunting. So I'm going to share this story with you of how I got this onyx while you watch kind of a quick video tour of such an example of an urban rock hunt. So just imagine you're walking through town looking for rocks. So back in, again, about the year 2000, I saw these floors. Of course, I had always seen them. They're all over Mexico, both made of these squares, as you're seeing here, where they inlay pieces of stone. And then also they would make the floors on site with no squares. It would just be a single poured floor, and they would inlay these pieces of marble and onyx and every kind and color of stone with every kind and color of background you could imagine. And so I tracked down a guy who made these tiles. He had his store here in Atlacomulco, and I asked him if he could sell me some of the slabs of marble and onyx and whatnot. Well, it turns out he had already closed his store. He was tearing it all out, and he dug out the residue that had built up over 40 years of operation. He had these molds where kind of like a tortilla press, and he would press the cement and ground up marble and onyx and the slices. He would press them in this literally like a hand press and make these tiles. Those are the squares you saw earlier. So the long story short is he traded a full dump truck load of the residue from his floor, which is this beautiful urbanite that you're seeing here, and 1 or 2 tons of the onyx that we just finished seeing in this video. He traded all of this to me in exchange for English classes. And he sadly told me that he had already hauled off 3 other dump truck loads of both rocks and the residue from the floor to a place where they were trying to build the land up to build a neighborhood. This next video shows this colorful urbanite in more detail.